Well, hello again, Mr. Bailey. Sorry, Mr. Harris. I'm a day out. Hello, Mr. Harris. Are you ready to carry on? Good.
I am, sir, yeah.
Good. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Harris, can we look at CEP 50304, please? This is an email from you to Deborah French, 16th of May 2014. Hi, Deb. Further to our telephone conversation this morning, I look forward to receiving information and photographs on both the Kilburn and Birmingham projects. This might help in overcoming the planners' concerns following their visit to both Ferrier Point and Camden earlier this week. What were the planners' concerns there that you were referring to?
I believe it was, this was down to appearance. On Camden and on Ferrier Point, they had, Camden, they were just sort of light beige coloured panels. And on Ferrier Point, I think they were silver and blue. And I think they wanted something a bit more fancy, for want of a better word. So the concerns were a visual appearance.
Were you concerned at this stage that there was a risk that Rayner Bond ACM panels might not be approved by the planners?
No.
No. Did Harley have any association with either the Kilburn or Birmingham project that you've referred to?
No.
Can you go to paragraph 22 of your statement, please, at page 6? You say there, your statement, page 6. I don't know what this is. Well, the reference to your statement is HAR 30100159. I think we've got an email which has nothing to do with anything. Or at least not this. Page 22, please. Yes. Paragraph 22, page 6. In the months that followed, and this is in context January 2014, I was still liaising with Studio E and Ryden about the material to be used for the cladding. However, most of these discussions continued to focus on the colour and physical appearance of various materials rather than their safety or suitability. You say most of these discussions. Is it fair to say that the sole focus of Studio E, Ryden and Harley, and indeed the planners, was on the aesthetic properties of the cladding rather than their fire performance?
Yes.
Do you recall any discussions of the fire performance of the cladding taking place between any of Studio E, Ryden and Harley? Or the planners?
Not with me. Whether others did, I can't answer that, but certainly I had no discussions with any of those organisations. And whether other people from Harley did, or whether those organisations did between themselves, I don't know.
Do you recall any discussions about the core of the panels and what the core of the panels was to be made of?
Absolutely not.
Now, you received an email from Simon Lawrence regarding samples for the mock-up, and I think we see that at SEA 3010994, please. And this is an email dated the 22nd of May 2014. Hi Mark, having spoken with Bruce, you see that, and my client this afternoon, it feels that the first choice is definitely natural brushed aluminium. And then he goes on in the next paragraph about the supply, and he says in the third line, I'm sure Rayner Bond will happily supply the sample material when it comes to it. We haven't engaged with any of their competitors when looking at the samples so far, and we don't intend to, providing they give us the service. I'm not sure if Aluka Bond, Trespa, or whoever will be more than happy to help. I'm sorry, I misread that. If not, I'm sure Aluka Bond, Trespa, or whoever will be more than happy to help. Is it fair to say, looking at that, that as at late May 2014, Rayner Bond ACM was the only product that was genuinely being investigated?
I think it was probably preferred at that stage, yes.
Well, to put my question another way in light of that answer, is it right that as at late May 2014, there were no serious investigations of any other product other than Rainabond ACM?
I think that'll be a reasonably fair comment at that stage, because they were looking at the client and the architect wanted a mock-up built, which was quite a substantial mock-up on the side of the building. So that meant a lot of people doing a lot of work. So you couldn't do that with multiple companies.
We can see that on the 25th of July, you were told by Studio E that Rainabond Champagne cassettes had been selected. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
Well, let's just look at a document. CEP 50427. This is an email from you to others within Harley. See that?
Yep.
The architect for Grenfell Tower just called us up to keep us in the loop with respect to material choice. The Rainabond colour choice for the whole job is champagne in a cassette format. We cannot take this as formal instruction, but I'm told this is unlikely to change. We await formal notification. And then I think you notified Jeff Blades of CEP and Deborah French at Alcoa, didn't you?
Would seem so, yes.
As you can see from that. And you say, Jeff, Deb, for your interest, I can hear you swearing from here, Deb. And the response to that from Mr. Blades is at CEP 50428, if we just look at that. He says to you, hi, Mark, good news, and Debs will be swearing with joy. See you Wednesday. Do we take it from this exchange that the months of hard work put in by you to secure Rainabond ACM on Grenfell and to see off the threat of zinc, as it were, had paid off well in terms of your relationships with CEP and with Debbie French?
Well, I don't know that it can be all attributed to me. There's a whole team of people at Harley involved in this process, and obviously CEP are involved, and Debbie's involved, and the architect's involved, and Rydens are involved. So it's a combination of everybody's efforts together. It's not just one person.
No. And if you look
I think the thrust of the point you need to understand, Mr. Harris, is that you had been successful in seeing off, to use Mr. Millett's expression, other potential choices.
I don't think that's the correct way of putting it, sir. I don't think seeing off is the correct expression. I think we had spoken to Rainabond more than anybody else because they were providing very good service. That could easily have been another product, but it wasn't. It was Rainabond. In any event, nobody had been seen off at that stage because the tender that we produced was still based on the original zinc material, which could have been selected.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
But by this stage, it had not been selected, or had rather been deselected, because we can see that Rainabond Champagne, in a cassette format, had, subject to formal instruction, been selected, hadn't it? And you were delighted about it.
Well, that's been selected, of course, but that's been selected by other people, not by us.
All right. Can I look at CEP 50443 then, please? This is an email a few days later from Deborah French to you, 1st of August 2014. And at the bottom of that page, you can see that Simon Lawrence comes in with an email to you, third line. The bottom line is that the client has just confirmed to planning that they are looking to proceed with the Rainabond champagne colour as shown on the mock-up for the main body of the building, and cladding will be the cassette fixing version. And you send that on to Jeff Blades and Deborah French within the hour of receiving it on the 31st of July. You see that? Jeff, Deb, copy for your interest. And then the next day, the 1st of August 2014, Deborah French responds to you and Jeff Blades saying, hi Mark, it's getting exciting. Thank you for your hard work and perseverance in putting Rainer Bond forward. I think I owe you and Jeff either lunch or dinner at some point. Now, putting that together with the emails we've just been looking at, it's right, isn't it, that the reality is that at this stage, you, CEP and Deborah French were very happy indeed that Rainer Bond ACM had won.
The three companies that we worked for were happy. We were three individuals that happened to work for those companies.
All right. The three companies were happy that Rainer Bond had won.
Correct.
Yeah. And do you agree with Deborah French's impression that Harley were instrumental in putting Rainer Bond forward, as she puts it?
Harley, as I said earlier on, responded to requests from people. After it was proved that the job was over budget, the request for alternative materials, Harley was very helpful in providing that information.
Well, she says to you personally, Mr. Harris, thank you for your hard work and perseverance in putting Rainer Bond forward. And that was her impression. Was she just being polite, or did you think she meant it?
I think she was being polite. I mean, she's addressing it to me at Harley. So this is not a personal email. This is an email from Deborah French in her capacity as UK sales manager for Rainer Bond, emailing to me in my capacity at Harley. This is not a personal email.
I understand that. Well, if it was rewritten to say, thank you and everyone at Harley for all of your hard work and perseverance in putting Rainer Bond forward, would you agree that Harley, as I'd asked you, was instrumental in, quotes, putting Rainer Bond forward, close quotes? Would you agree
Harley
with that?
and other organisations were involved in that process, yes.
Is it fair to say, looking at this email, that at least by this point, Miss Deborah French knew that the panels that were to be used were the cassette method?
I believe so.
If Rainer Bond, that is Alcoa and Miss French, had any concerns at the time regarding the safety of the use of cassette panels on Grenfell Tower, would you have expected her to raise them with you?
Yes.
Did she ever?
No. I can only speak for myself here.
Of course.
So not I can't answer whether she raised it with anybody else.
Can I then turn to a slightly different subject, which is your relationship, or Harley's relationship, if you like, with Ryden? Can I take you to paragraph 16 of your statement at page 4? You say, there, at page 4, paragraph 16, as well as Studio E, I was also liaising with Ryden around this time, as they were interested in tendering for the main contractor work on the project. My main point of contact at Ryden at that early stage was Jonathan Rowland. Harley had worked with Ryden on a number of other projects, so we were keen to stay in touch with them throughout the tendering process. Now, you remember from this morning we looked together at the way in which you first became aware of the Grenfell Tower project in early 2013.
Yeah.
And we I think, looked at an email in August to Bruce Soanes. Can we look at RYD 401228? This is an email from you to Jonathan Rowland at Ryden. Dated 24th of August 2013, so a few months later, and I think we saw this earlier this morning. Are you guys tracking a project called Grenfell? We've been tracking this one for quite a while. It's typical of the type of work we were jointly involved with at Chalkets and Ferrier. This one has, it says, this one has our name written all over it. Now, when you say our, were you referring to Ryden and Harley working as a team together, or to Harley there?
No, Ryden and Harley.
Ryden and Harley, I see.
Yes.
So you were liaising with Ryden at a very early stage with a view to forming as it were, informally, a joint venture or joint working relationship on this project?
No, that was too early at that stage. I was just hoping riders were on the tender list, or we were, the Harley were hoping riders were on there. But obviously we can't influence a PQQ process, and they may or may not have been on the eventual tender list. And if they hadn't have been, we would have gone after it to tender it anyway. But yeah, that was very early doors, and we were hoping that riders would be pursuing it to be on the main contract tender list.
How many projects had Harley previously worked on with Ryden before this time?
2.
So it's Chalkets and Ferrier.
Yes, but we had tendered other tower block projects with them,
Right.
Which we were successful on.
Unsuccessful.
Correct.
Roughly how many? Do you remember?
Crikey. 2 to 3, I think, from memory.
All right. Did you send an email like this to any other potential main contractor?
No.
Can we look at RYD 401398, please? And I think we saw this earlier. This is the email you sent to Steve Blake on the 27th of September 2013 after the Hayes Galleria meeting, and you say to him, "How are things progressing with PQQ on Grenfell Tower? As you might recall, we made contact with the architect about the cladding back in April. He called up a few days ago and asked for a meeting. Ray and myself met with Bruce Stones and Thomas Reck of Studio E Architects this morning. We had a good session talking about several aspects, including available products, interface details, program, access, design, and budget costs. We spoke extensively about Ferrier Point, being that there are a number of strong similarities between Ferrier and Grenfell. I think they might well pay a visit to Newham in the near future." And Newham is where Ferrier Point was, isn't it, I think?
That's correct.
Yeah. Now, this was long before even the invitation to tender went out, wasn't it?
Yes.
Can you tell us why you informed Ryden about this specific meeting and what had been discussed at that meeting at this stage?
Yeah, I think we were keeping them in the loop. I mean, at this stage, my job in terms of business development is to expose the name Harley to as many people as possible, and that's part of that process. And obviously wanted Ryden to know that we were getting ourselves involved, wanted to know where they were with it, didn't know who else was involved, so I couldn't have approached any other main contractors, so I wouldn't have known at that stage. And obviously we were hoping, as I said earlier, that Ryden would make the tender list. So this was just an ongoing exchange of information.
Did you send a similar email to any other potential main contractor?
Well, not at that stage, as I wouldn't have known who they were. I think we did find out, obviously, because we ended up tendering all 4 in the end.
How did you know that Ryden were in the frame at this stage?
Well, we didn't. That's why I'm asking, how are they progressing with their PQQ? That's a pre-qualification process that they have to go through to get on the tender list. So I didn't know whether they were even on it at that stage or not.
Well, did you send a similar email, for example, to Waits or Durkin or Mullally?
I don't think there was a similar email. I definitely had email exchanges with all of them at some stage because they were all tendering it.
Yeah, but at this, that's right, but at this stage, at this early stage, did you send a similar email to any other potential main contractors, such as Waits, Durkin or Mullally?
No, I wouldn't have known who else was going after it.
But how did you know that Ryden was going after it?
I didn't. I had to. If you look at the earlier email trails, I'm asking them the question: is it on their radar? Are they intending to pursue it? And it was on their radar, and they started pursuing it. Once they'd started pursuing it, I kept in touch.
Now, you asked Ryden how their PQQ, pre-qualification questionnaire, was progressing. Why did you need to know that?
Well, I didn't really. I was just interested.
Right. So you were interested in Harley, but it appears at this stage not any other potential contractor. Is that correct?
No, not at all. I've been happy to have spoken to other contractors, and did eventually when I found out who they were.
Yeah, well, I think we've got the answer to my question. If we look at your sales progress report at HAR 3010160, we can see that Ryden started keeping Harley updated. Can we go to page 3, please? You can see that on the 5th of December there, towards the bottom of the page, Mr. Harris, 5th of December, there it is. File note, call received from Simon Lawrence at Ryden to advise that they attended the main contractor project intro meeting with the client and architect yesterday, and others in attendance included Keepmoat, Durkin and Waits. When the architect gave a slideshow presentation of the scheme, Harley's name was included on the slide and verbal reference was made to the assistance that we provided. Is it fair to say that although the tender process was at this stage preliminary, Harley were firmly associated with the project?
Well, I never saw that presentation because I wasn't. So I don't actually know what was used, but the architect had obviously used something, but we don't know what that is. So we had an association with it, but we could not take that for granted.
Do you remember what else was discussed on this phone call with Mr. Lawrence?
No.
Now, moving forward in time, HAR 50911, please. This is an email of the 6th of February 2014 that you sent to Simon Lawrence at Ryden. Just to remind you of the chronology, 6th of February 2014 is after the invitation to tender and the tender documents had gone out, but before the tender responses had come back. And let's look at the bottom email first, if we can. On page 1, it's you to Simon Lawrence, 6th of February. Simon, just to keep you in the loop, we've been asked by a couple of the other MCs about programme. See below the response we've sent out. We have opted to keep it basic and not issue a detailed programme, but would be pleased to do so for your good self. Do we take it from this email that you were telling Ryden what you had told other bidders about the programme?
Yeah, we were trying to be fair and open with all of them and give them all the same programme.
Well, it looks from this, just help me, that you'd been asked by a couple of the other main contractors about the programme, had sent responses out to them, but wanted to make sure Ryden were kept in the loop. Is that?
Yes.
Yes. And you say, we opted to keep it basic and not issue a detailed programme, but would be pleased to do so for your good self. Is that to be read as saying that although you've given other potential main contractors basic information, you'd be pleased to give Ryden a detailed programme?
Yeah, we obviously would have given them a bit more information. I mean, we wouldn't have been me producing it. It would have been somebody in the contracts team, but it would have been the same durations, but just with a bit more detail.
Why were you proposing to provide more detailed programme information to Ryden over the other main contractors?
That's just based on the relationship that we have with Ryden.
Right. Is it fair to say that you were doing everything you could to see that Ryden was awarded the project over other potential competitors?
No, I can't bring any influence to bear on that. That's the client's decision.
All right. Is it fair to say that you were doing everything you could to help Ryden win the contract?
I was doing everything I could to be helpful to Ryden.
To help Ryden win the contract, Mr. Harris?
To help Ryden, and if they went forward and won the contract, then great. But I was doing my job, sir, at the time to help Ryden.
Yes, to help Ryden, but you were offering to give them more help than the potential competitors for this contract, weren't you, as we can see?
Yes.
Yes, and that was because, I would suggest, you were helping them win the contract.
Well, we can't help them win the contract. Their tender with the client is between them and the client. We can't help that process. What we're trying to be is helpful to Ryden, so that whatever they put forward, that may be helpful to them. But what they propose in their tender is absolutely between them and the client.
Let's look at Mr. Lawrence's reply to you of the same day. Top of the page, please. Mark, thanks for letting me know. I hope you were as vague with your price for them whilst inflating it also, ! What did you understand Mr. Lawrence reply to mean there?
Don't know what he meant by that, but I can assure you that we didn't do any of that.
Was it usual at the time for you to collaborate with a potential main contractor to this extent when preparing your own bid?
Yeah, I think over the years there's been, we've had similar close relationships with the likes of Waits on particular projects. On the Little Venice project, we're very close to Waits, for example. There does come a point in the process where a main contractor will favour or identify a preferred subcontractor. To give you an example of that, with Ryden, we went after the bid for Guy's hospital refurbishment, and in that particular instance, the main contractor had to declare to the client their preferred choice of cladding contractor during the tender phase, and that was us with Ryden. So it's not unusual for that process to happen.
Well, we know that you knew that Waits were tendering for Grenfell.
Yep.
You've given them as an example in the Little Venice project. Why did you prefer to work? Why did you assist Ryden to win the contract and not give Waits the same assistance?
Well, we'd have been delighted to have Waits, but they withdrew from tendering.
Well, let's see. At HAR 50913, this is an email of the 7th of February 2014, and you, I think, tell Simon Lawrence here about the progress, and you say, just another quick update on what we know so far. According to Keepmoat, they declined in the end due to tender timescales, as did Waits. I believe this leaves you guys, Durkan and Mullally. I spoke with Mullally yesterday, and the chap there said he'd been busy on another tender and won't get around to looking at it until early next week. Durkan are the only ones who have shown any interest at all, but to be honest, they've no pedigree with this type of work. Hopefully, all this means that Ryden will be in a strong position. It's all down to you now, Simon. No pressure. Now, can we take it from this email that you were, at this stage, to put it colloquially, Ryden's self-appointed spy to report back to Ryden what you knew about the bidding position of the other bidders on the project?
I wouldn't class myself as a self-appointed spy at all. I think you find in the world of contracting, main contractors, subcontractors, they'll all be telling each other all sorts of things all the time. This goes on all the time, where there'll be bits of industry or market intel that people share with each other. This is absolutely the way the industry works.
Well, we haven't seen any emails between you and people at Durkan or Mullally or Keepmoat or Waits telling each of them what the other bidders were doing. Is that because you weren't telling Keepmoat, Durkan and Mullally what each of the other bidders were doing, respectively?
No, we weren't, because our relationship, we had the historic relationship was with Ryden.
Yes. And in fact, Mr. Harris, isn't that entirely encapsulated by the last sentence of this email and your word, hopefully? You wanted Ryden to win this contract and were giving them inside information about the other bidders and what you knew about them in order to help them.
We hoped that Ryden would win it, yes.
And were giving them information that you knew about from the other bidders in order to help them.
Well, I'm not sure how much help that was. I mean, they won't know what the other bidders bid. And we played it very fair and square. We bid everybody on the same basis with the original specification. We didn't show favouritism because we can't do that. That's not tender protocol. And also, for all we knew, Durkan or Mullally or somebody else could win the job, and we would want to pursue it with them.
Yeah. You didn't provide any of these other potential main contractors with the detail and quantity of the information that you were providing to Ryden, did you?
No.
or the information about what the other potential main contractors were doing?
No.
Can we turn to Ryden's tender, please? This is ART 402087. This is the first page of the tender submission, and just for your assistance, it's dated the 13th of February 2014. If we go to page, well, general question I should ask first. Did you provide any assistance to Ryden with information about Harley or the cladding subcontract when Ryden put this document together?
No, and I've never seen this document either.
Oh, you've never seen it? Okay. Well, then I could take this very quickly, I think. Can you look at page 44? This is part of the document which describes Harley Curtain Wall Limited, and it says supply chain partner to Ryden Construction. Is that correct, that at this stage, 13th of February 2014, Harley Curtain Wall were, in one way or another, a supply chain partner to Ryden Construction?
Well, I think these documents are from the Guy's Tower tender. I think they've used them from that.
That's a supposition you've made just looking at the document now, is it?
It is, because on that particular issue, as I explained earlier, on that particular tender with Guy's Tower, Ryden and Harley were partnered up because that was the nature of the tender. The tenderers had to disclose to the client who their preferred facade contractor was for that project. So they had to insert this type of information. And I recognise that, and I'm pretty sure that was from that tender submission.
I see. So I think preempts my next question, which was, how can you explain how Mr. Ankertall-Jones's CV details, as we see on this page here, came to be in this document if they hadn't been provided by Harley for this purpose?
Well, as I say, I'm pretty sure that they were from another project on which we were a supply chain partner, because that was the nature of that particular tender.
Did you know, Mr. Harris, that Ryden were going to be using the information from the Guy's Tower tender document and simply insert it into the Grenfell Tower tender document?
No.
Now, just going back, if I can, to the other tenderers, can I ask you to look at TMO 00850-358? Now, this is an email, Mr. Harris, you will not have seen, or certainly not at the time, from Jenny Jackson of the TMO to Claire Williams and David Gibson of the 15th of January 2014. So it's about a month before the Ryden tender document we've just seen, and so it's during the tender process. And she says here, there were a number of reasons that Keepmoat withdrew from the tender process. I'm grateful that they shared these with us. I think these were they were mentioned to me in confidence, and therefore we need to be careful how, if they are circulated. Concerns included noise implications from the drilling with residents in occupation, concerns from the mechanical contractor re the interface of the old and new systems, restricted space for the mechanical works, lack of time for the cladding specialist to undertake all the investigations needed, specification of a new type of panel, congested egress, and the normal risks gaining access to residential properties, not a key reason. Overall, this is viewed as a high risk, in quotation marks, job, and Keepmoat already has a strong order book for the next 12 months. Trust this is helpful. Were concerns similar to this expressed to you by anybody at Keepmoat?
No.
Can you help me with what lack of time for for the cladding specialist to undertake all the investigations needed might mean. And I know you didn't see this email at the time, but this was clearly a problem which Keepmoat saw. Did you see that there was a problem in lack of time for Harley to undertake all the investigations you needed?
I actually don't know what they mean by investigation, so I can't really answer it because I don't understand what they mean.
Were you talking to Keepmoat as the potential cladding specialist subcontractor on this job?
We must have done at some point. We must have done, yeah. But I certainly didn't get involved in conversations like that because I couldn't have answered that anyway. But I don't actually know what they mean by investigations.
Right. So do I take it from that you never said to Keepmoat, we haven't got enough time to undertake our investigations?
Not personally, no.
And do we take it from that Keepmoat never expressed to you that they were concerned that you didn't have enough time to undertake investigations?
I don't recall that happening. No.
What about specification of a new panel? Did you ever have any discussions with Keepmoat about concerns arising from the specification of a new type of panel?
I don't recall anything. Obviously, this is several years ago, so I am struggling on some of these things, but I don't remember it. But yeah, it's several years ago now, so.
She says that they had said that overall they had viewed it as a high-risk job. Were you aware of Grenfell Tower being viewed as a high-risk job by other potential main contractors, such as Keepmoat?
I don't recall that being, that term being used by anybody.
Did you or anyone else at Harley, to your knowledge, share any concern that the Grenfell Tower subcontract was a high-risk job?
I don't think we viewed it as a high-risk job. I mean, all jobs have risk, and it depends how you determine what is high risk. I mean, everything is high risk because you're working on high-rise, so there's obvious dangers involved with high-rise buildings. But in terms of Grenfell being any more high risk than any other tower block, I would say not.
In my question, I used the word subcontract. I meant main contract, but I take it from your answer that the answer would be the same.
Yeah, it was no more. From a Harley point of view, it wasn't viewed as any more high risks than any of the other tower block projects that had been undertaken.
Can I then turn to a slightly different topic, which is cost savings? Can I ask you to go to HAR 3010160, your sales progress form, and look at page 4. And I'd like to look at February, the 3rd of February 2014, and the entry there. 3rd of February 2014, on page 4. MAH call, you see that? Received from Scott MacDonald at Durcan. And then underneath that file note, MA's email sent to Katie at Ryden with cost savings for alternative solutions for the internal reveal liners. MA, is that Mike Albiston? Sorry, there's a pause. Let me try and do this way. Let's look at RYD 402720. RYD 402720. This should be an email from Mike Albiston. Right, Mike Albiston, 3rd of February, to Katie Bachelier at Ryden, copied to Simon Lawrence and you. And here you can see some detailed cost information based on your quotation. You see that? And here are some
Yep.
prices for Indo reveals. And you describe these in your note as cost savings, as we've just seen. And my question is, did you or Mike Albiston offer these cost savings to the other potential main contractors?
I don't know. I can't remember.
We've seen no evidence of it. Would it surprise you that you didn't offer these cost savings to any of the other main contractors?
Not if they hadn't have asked for them. If this is something that Ryden had thought about themselves and nobody else had requested it, then I wouldn't be surprised, no.
Can we then turn to an email at HAR 50927, page 1. This is an email of the 17th of April 2014 from Simon Lawrence to you, copied to Mike Albiston. Mark, thanks for this. And this is in relation to some Ferrier Point cladding details. I've spoken to Bruce, Studio E Architects, this afternoon. I've confirmed that I'm happy for him to contact yourselves, but to ensure I'm copied in so we keep some sort of protocol guidelines from the start. And then you talk about the Dropbox files. And then he says, one thing I would ask, which I'm sure you'll do anyway, is that anything financial stays between ourselves. And we can see your reply at RYD 403891. RYD 403891. And you say to him, Simon, duly noted and understood. What did you understand Mr. Lawrence to mean by his comment that anything financial stays between you and him?
Well, that's fairly standard, to be honest, with the main contractor. It's between us and them. That's the business of Harley and Ryden, or Harley and any other main contractor. And it's up to Ryden who they share that information with. It's not for us to do that at this point. So, yeah, I think that's fairly standard protocol. Any main contractor would have been asking the same thing.
Why would Mr. Lawrence be so concerned to ensure that financial arrangements were not disclosed to Bruce Soanes?
Because they were confidential between our respective companies.
And is that because you didn't want them to see the true financial position as between you?
Well, it's nobody else's business.
Can I ask you to look at RYD 404204? This is an email which you weren't sent from Zach Maynard to Steve Blake, both at Ryden, 8th of May 2014. And we can see here that Zach Maynard sets out a range of proposed savings with a Harley figure in brackets. And we've been through this evidence with both Mr. Blake and Mr. Maynard, Mr. Harris. Mr. Blake confirmed in his evidence that Ryden were intending on passing only some of the savings on to the TMO, that you, Harley, had offered them in respect of these cladding options and intending to retain the difference. The first question is, did you know that at the time?
No.
I see. But then the second question doesn't arise. Can I then ask you about the NBS specification and the preparation of the bid? And I'm going to start by taking you to your statement, paragraph 19, page 5, please. And here you say, I believe that the tender package for the Grenfell Tower refurbishment was released around the end of December 2013, January 2014. I don't remember the exact contents of that tender package, but typically such packages would include drawings of elevations, section and floor plans, and the NBS specification. The NBS specification would contain details of proposed materials. Now, that specification was sent to Harley in around January 2014. Do you recall seeing it at the time, do you think?
I would have been aware of the receipt of the tender package, and tender packages typically go into the estimating department for the estimator to pull it apart to see what had been received. What may happen after that is that RFIs, which is request for information, may be sent out if we require clarity on anything. It's highly likely that the estimator would have referred to the technical department in Harley if he was unsure about anything technically, and then he would start the process of pulling the tender together.
I could take this shortly then. Did you know that the NBS specification required pricing for a zinc Proteus panel supplied by KME Architectural Solutions?
Yes.
Did you know that the NBS specification also required bidders to include alternative quotes on the basis of the following products or manufacturers in place of zinc Proteus, namely Alcoa Architectural Products Rainobond, Alucobond Spectra, and VM Zinc for Court Zinc? Did you know
Yes.
that? You did. Did you know also that Harley then started asking for prices to provide its tender to main contractors?
Yes.
Which organisations did you approach in order to get those prices, apart from Rainobond we've seen?
Well, I can't because I would not have sent those out.
Right.
Mike Elvis remember that better, but CEP would certainly have been amongst that. But other than that, I don't know offhand.
Okay, well, let's see how far we go. Could you go, please, to CEP 50267? CEP 50267. This is an email of the 20th of December 2013. So this is before the final NBS specification came out, but I think after one of the earlier editions in November. It's an email from Jeff Blades to Mike Albiston and copied to you. I'm sorry, I think I'm looking, in fact, for page 3, first of all. This is Jeff Blades to Mike Albiston, not copied to you. This one is not copied to you. But I think you get to see it later in the chain. And he says, "Morning, Mike. Following my telephone conversation with Mark Harris yesterday, could you please forward your window and curtain wall schedule? With regards to the rain screen overcladding, we are to offer our system based on a cassette tray and face-fixed ACM, i.e. Rainobond. To this, could you please forward elevation drawings and any other information you feel is relevant?" Now, it looks as if you'd had a telephone conversation with Jeff Blades on the 19th of December 2013. Do you remember that conversation at all?
No, I don't.
Did you in fact instruct Mr. Blades to offer a system based on a cassette tray and face-fixed ACM, i.e. Rainobond?
I don't remember doing that. I would have thought that he would have been pricing in accordance with the specification.
Did you ask Mr. Blades to offer whether cassette tray or face-fixed ACM, Alucobond?
I don't remember doing that.
What about VM Zinc?
No, I don't remember the detail of the conversation, to be honest.
Did you only ask Mr. Blades to offer a system based on Rainobond and no other product?
Well, it would have been the estimator that would have dealt with the inquiry, so I don't know who else you went out to. I wouldn't have been determining that.
Right. Can you explain why Jeff Blades thought that he was to offer his system based on Rainobond, but no other product, as it appears from this email at least?
Don't know.
Can you explain why you, as in Harley, asked for cassette tray as well as face fixed?
I don't know. I can't remember whether they were the options requested. I don't know.
Mr. Bailey, Ray Bailey, told us yesterday that Harley had never actually used a cassette fix ACM cladding or fixed system on any project prior to Grenfell. Is that right?
It sounds correct, because I know Harrier Point and Chalcots were both face fixed, as was Clements Court. So I think that sounds correct to me.
But you can't explain why a cassette tray was asked for as well as face fixed.
No.
Can we then scroll up and look at pages 2 and 3 side by side? If we can, on the screen. I'm not sure we can do that with what you've got, but we can see that on the 6th of January, Mike Albiston sent the NBS specification for the rain screen to Jeff Blades along with the elevation drawings. You can see that, I think, from the email which starts at the bottom of page 2 and runs over to page 3. Can you see that, Mr. Harris?
I can, yeah.
Yes. And then we get the quote in response at CEP 50268. And here it is. This is CEP's quotation to Harley for your attention, as well as Mike Albiston's, 21st of January 2014. Dear Sirs, Ref Grenfell Tower, thank you for your inquiry, Ref the above project, and we have pleasure in confirming our quotation for the design, fabrication and supply only of aluminium windows and rain screen over cladding as laid out below. And then he refers to the aluminium windows and explains those in the first paragraph. And then halfway down the page, rain screen over cladding, panels are to be manufactured utilizing 4mm Rainobond ACM. And you can look over to the next page. And there are prices there for the rain screen, or a price for the rain screen. Rain screen in the sum of £525,394 net. We've allowed a sum of £25,000 within the above rain screen value for materials up to the Crown. Upon receipt of further details, further information, this value can be firmed up. This excludes any steel work that may be required. And looking down the rest of that to the end of the document, you can't see any reference to any other product. My question is, do you know why Mr. Blades only provided a quotation for the Rainobond ACM when he had been sent the full specification by Mr. Albiston?
Well, I don't think CEP fabricated the other products.
What about a Lucobond?
Don't know about a Lucobond. I don't recall them ever fabricating a Lucobond, but they may have done, but I couldn't be sure on that. But certainly the zinc product they wouldn't have fabricated.
No, I understand the zinc product. You made that clear earlier on. But in relation to other ACM candidates, and we've seen those in the NBS, but I would just really want to know why Mr. Blades only provided a quote for Rainobond.
That's really a question for Jeff Blades, to be honest.
Well, my suggestion to you is that, well, let me ask you, did you tell him to? Did you tell him only to quote for Rainobond?
Well, I would have told him that anyway, because I'm not the estimator.
Well, to your knowledge, did Mike Albiston tell him only to quote for Rainobond?
I don't know.
Can we go to CEP 30's 50865, please? This is his email under which Mr. Blades sends what we've just looked at to you and Mike Albiston. Mark, please find attached our quotation for the above. I'll follow this with a separate window quote based on Wicona. It looks from this as if this was all you were going to get from Mr. Blades in relation to quotations for rain screen. There was going to be a separate window quote for Wicona.
Yeah.
So on that basis, it looks as if there was only one quotation for fabrication, and that was only ever based on Rainabond. Is that right?
It would seem that way, yes.
And did you ever, or did Mike Albiston ever go to any other fabricator and ask them for quotations for the other alternative rain screen cladding products specified in the NBS specification?
We must have done, because our quotes included those, so we must have done.
You say you must have done.
Yeah.
Which other, let's try and get some detail here. Which other fabricators did you approach?
Well, I didn't. This is the problem. I didn't do it. Mike did. So I'm struggling to answer because I didn't do the job.
I understand
So
that.
I don't know who.
Right. So when you say you must have done, why do you say that if you don't know?
I'm assuming he did. Let me put it that way.
Right.
Because Harley's quotation, it was based on the zinc cladding with options for ACM. So they must have come from somewhere. So the assumption would be that he must have obtained those costs from other people.
But just as we can see that
weren't CEP, you know.
I'm so sorry, I spoke across you. Do you want to finish that? All right.
No, I think I was there. I think I was done.
All right. Just as we can see that you were copied into the discussions between Mike Albiston and CEP, would it not follow that you would also have been copied in to discussions between Mike Albiston and any other fabricator?
Possibly. I can't answer that. I mean, quite possibly.
Did you have any discussions with Mike Albiston about conversations with or requests for quotations from any other fabricator other than CEP?
I'm sure we did. Yeah, I mean, I think I explained Harley was a small office and we were all on one level, all within, earshot of each other. So we were speaking about lots of things all the time, every day. So we were all speaking and all in one room together. So it was we didn't have to write to each other or phone each other. We were all in earshot of each other. So lots of conversations would have gone on.
Maybe they would have done. I think at the very beginning of your answer, the transcriber has got down inaudible, but I heard you say, I think we would have done, as I think we explained. Let me just ask the question again. Did you, or do you recall having any discussions with Mike Albiston specifically about conversations with or requests for quotations from any fabricator other than CEP?
I can't remember specific conversations. I would have to assume that those conversations did happen, but I can't specifically remember them.
Can you go to CEP 50273, please? This is an email from you to Jeff Blades, 29th of January 2014, in which you say, "Hi Jeff, just to let you know, the main contractor tender return date has been further extended by another week, 14th of February. So glad we pulled out all the stops to get a price back." Does that tell us that you and CEP were working against a relatively tight timescale to get the tender ready for submission?
Yeah, tender periods can sometimes be rather short, and as I said there, you pull out all the stops, so you work very hard to hit a particular date. And then once you've got your tender together, you suddenly hear that there's been an extension of time, which is a bit frustrating because you probably burnt the midnight oil to get the tender put together when you perhaps didn't need to because there was an extension. But obviously at the time, we wouldn't have known about that extension.
No. Did the pressure of time that this email indicates existed impact on the extent to which you sought quotations from other fabricators?
No, we're always used to working to tight timescales. That's the nature of estimating.
Right. Can I ask you then to go to the tender document, RYD 3094244? This is a slightly different question or different topic, but while I'm on the subject of tender, I should ask it. This is Ryden's tender submission, and I want to go to page 15, please. Page 15. And here we can see Ryden putting forward, Ryden putting forward, as part of its contract sum analysis, cost for alternative design solutions, refer to drawing specification and room data sheets for the full scope of works. And under cladding, we can see, Mr. Harris, that there is a red, in other words, a discount figure, or minus figure, for new aluminium cladding, including necessary support, insulation, etc., to facade of tower, of £243,067. Do you know how that number was arrived at?
Absolutely no idea.
Do you know who would know how that number was arrived at?
I can only assume that would be the Ryden estimating department, maybe the commercial department, but predominantly with Ryden estimating, I would assume.
Well, Zach Maynard didn't appear to know, so I'm asking you.
I mean, he's not. Well, this isn't our work, so we didn't do this. So Zach was commercial manager, so I would imagine this was done by Ryden estimating, but that's a guess. I don't know.
Would Ryden not have got the reduction in the price of the new aluminium cladding from you, Harley?
Yes.
And therefore the figure of £243,067 would have come originally, would it not, from Harley?
I don't know whether that figure came from us, but any figures relating to cladding would have come from us. But what Ryden did with them after that is a matter for them.
No, I understand that. All I'm really seeking to get from you is whether you know where that figure of 243,000 comes from.
No, I don't.
Can we then talk about value engineering for a moment? Can I ask you to go to paragraph 23 of your statement at page 6? You say there, by March 2014, it was becoming apparent that Ryden were the preferred main contractor of the Grenfell Tower project. I was also informed by Simon Lawrence of Ryden that at that stage the project was around £1 million over budget. As such, there was a real focus amongst the various potential stakeholders on value engineering. The subject of value engineering is always driven by the client and main contractor. Were you ever given any training on value engineering?
No.
Did you know that when doing value engineering, you were not supposed to sacrifice functionality or safety?
Well, I think these days we have to call it dynamic purchasing. I don't think we're allowed to call it value engineering anymore.
Well,
because anybody in the industry will know exactly what it's supposed to mean and what it does mean in reality. And what it means to a subcontractor when somebody talks to you about value engineering means they want a reduction in price.
yes. And if you go to paragraph 46 of your statement on page 10, 4 pages on, please, you say there, costs undoubtedly played a significant part in determining decisions about the exterior of Grenfell Tower, as in any other similar projects. Clients continually place contractors under pressure to reduce cost. This is always the primary driver from the client side. As I've stated above, particularly at the time that Ryden looked set to win the tender for the project, there was an emphasis placed on value engineering because at that stage the project was around £1 million over budget. Is it fair to say, Mr. Harris, that cost motivated the change in rain screen product from zinc to ACM?
Yes.
And I think you told us earlier that there was at no stage any discussion about the impact of that change in respect of fire safety.
No.
And that when considering alternative products as part of the value engineering exercise, so far as you are concerned, fire safety was not considered.
Correct.
And to your knowledge, that it wasn't considered by anybody else at Harley either. Is that right?
I can't answer for other people, but I don't believe it was.
Can I then go back to your sales progress report? In fact, I'm sorry, I'm going to skip over that. I think we've probably covered that. Can I ask you to look at paragraph 59 of your statement at page 13? You say there, Harley was invited to tender for the window replacement and overcladding of Grenfell Tower by 4 potential main contractors, one of which was Ryden, who were eventually appointed as the main contractor. Harley was in competitive tender against other cladding subcontractors for this work. Which other cladding subcontractors was Harley competing with?
I can't remember, and I can't remember whether we knew at the time or not. Sometimes you find this information out through the supply chain. Somebody might tell you something of somebody else, their pricing. I honestly can't remember whether we knew or not, but we knew there would be others tendering.
You say you knew there would be others. Did you know that there actually were, or were you just assuming that there might be?
I can't prove it. I would have to assume it, but it would be the first time that's happened if there was nobody else, because every job I've ever known is you're competing against other people.
If you go back to the sales report, HAR 30101160, page 5, please. You can see that on the 12th of March 2014, I'm sorry, I'll wait for the document to come up. Mm. 12th of March 2014. You can see that MAH call, you see that? MAH call received from Simon at Ryden. They have received news off the record that Ryden are in pole position. They now await formal notification. And then again, next day, 13th of March 2013, MAH RJB call received from Steve Blake at Ryden. He advised that Ryden have been told off the record that they are in pole position. However, the job is over budget. Ryden are attending a meeting on Monday and require us to confirm available VE for them to table. Agree to provide this by tomorrow. Were you concerned or surprised that Ryden had been given an informal tip-off, as it were, that they were the front runners before the procurement process had been formally concluded?
Not especially.
Was that because that was normal in your experience?
Yeah, I've heard of that many times.
Right. Do you remember any further details of these discussions that you had with Steve Blake on the 13th of March?
No, I don't.
Now, in your statement at paragraph 23, as we've seen, I think already, you said that Simon Lawrence had told you in March 2014 that the project was over budget by £1 million. And if we looked at the entry for the 13th of March 2014 on page 5 of your log, your sales progress report, you can see that on the 13th of March you'd been told by Steve Blake that the job is over budget. Was it on that occasion, on the 13th of March, that you were told that the job was over budget?
That would appear so, with what I've written there.
Yes. Well, before you, as it were, give a final answer on that, let me show you page 6 and an entry for the 19th of March. see if we can get clarification on this. You can see that on the 19th of March, you get a call from Simon Lawrence, in which you're told that Ryden have been confirmed officially as the preferred contractor. And 4 lines down, it records the project is £1 million over budget, therefore VE is the key topic. Is that, or might that have been the occasion when Simon Lawrence told you that the project was £1 million over budget? 19th of March. Right.
I think so. It
Okay.
appeared that Steve telling me that it was over budget, and then it appears that's then followed up by Simon telling me how much it was over budget.
Right.
So it seemed there was a bit more detail from Simon.
What was your understanding of the client's budget at that stage?
Well, I didn't know the sum of money, just that it was £1 million over. But over what, I don't know.
Did that strike you as a lot?
No, not after 32 years, I'm afraid. No, it didn't.
Right. Did you feel under pressure to provide significant savings on the tendered price?
When this type of call comes in, you can't immediately say what you can save, but it happens on every single job. So to the extent, I would say that if somebody rang up and said, "We've got your quote here, thanks very much, we want to place an order," I think you would panic, because it just doesn't happen. You expect the call coming in to say, "You're too expensive, you need to find some money." That just happens on all tenders. It's standard. So those sort of calls coming in are just, they just happen on every job. And then it's a matter of, well, how much is it over budget? And then it's a matter of, well, let's see what we can do. Because, you know, when you look at it logically, it tells you that you're not going to find £1 million, but let's see what we can do. And obviously it's not just cladding. There are other packages on that project. So they weren't just looking at cladding being £1 million. They were trying to find £1 million overall. So Ryden's, no doubt, I don't know, but I would imagine they had that same conversation with other contractors and said the same thing to all of us.
Can we go to RYD 403315, please? RYD 403315. This is an email from you to Steve Blake, dated the 14th of March 2014, to which you attach a document called Proposed VE Cost Savings. Steve, please find the first round of VE options attached for Grenfell Tower. This is being presented to show the value of the compliant package with VE cost options below. The cladding is shown with 4 options for the main zinc areas. At the risk of stating the obvious, the cladding savings are not cumulative. Only one of the 4 options can be selected. Well, you can read the rest of the email, but I just want to ask you about the set of value engineering savings. First of all, well, let's look at the document, if we can. And then I'll come back to the email. The document is RYD 403315. I'm sorry, 403316. Can we just look at that? Did you compile this document?
I would imagine the estimator did it. I don't remember doing it personally. I think it was probably the estimator.
So Mike Albiston, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. And did you discuss it with him or see it before it went out?
Oh, yes, yes.
Right. So you were happy with it. Did you understand how he'd prepared it?
Yes.
You did. So you understood the basis of the numbers, did you?
I did.
Do you know what prompted Harley to prepare this document?
Well, Ryden's were asking us to.
Right. Do you know who asked you to?
That would have started life with Simon Lawrence.
Now, going back to the email, if we can, at RYD 403315, we'll come back to this budget in a moment. You say in the second main paragraph there, with regards to the planners and what they will accept, having never met the planners, it's difficult for us to comment. However, when we met the architect, it has to be said that they were somewhat precious about retaining the spec for the zinc cladding, but no doubt budget will be the driver here. Is that a reference to the Hayes Galleria meeting on the 27th of September 2013?
I don't know that it was a specific reference about that, to be honest.
I see. So when we met the architect, could refer, is this right, to any number of meetings between September 2013 and March 2014?
Absolutely, it could have been, yeah.
Right.
It may have been that meeting.
Is there a
but
particular occasion? Is there a particular occasion when you formed the view that Studio E were being, in your words, somewhat precious about retaining the spec for zinc?
Well, I think any architect, and we do respect this, but if any architect that's come up with a concept design, they do become precious about it. And I can understand that, because if there were no budget and they were left with a free hand to design what they want, they would go to town, because that's what they do. That's an architect. And then along comes a client and a contractor and starts telling them it can't be afforded. So they do get precious about their schemes.
Yes, but my question, I'm sorry to cut you off. My question was whether there was a particular occasion when you formed the view that Studio E were being precious. If it wasn't the September Hayes Galleria meeting, was it a specific occasion later?
I can't recall a specific occasion, right, to be honest.
In your experience, was budget normally the driver for decisions as to which cladding product to use?
Yes.
And then you go on to say, I'd be surprised, this is the last paragraph, in the second line, I'd be surprised if they would accept Reno Bond with a standard paint finish. However, we've included it as one of the options on the basis that a significant cost saving can be made. Although the attached states standard silver finish, any of the standard ACM colours would be available at the same rate. Given that you knew that Studio E's, to use your words, preference was for zinc, why did you include ACM materials here in this value engineering exercise?
Because the client had £1 million problem.
Right. And the way to solve it was ACM and not zinc. Is that the blunt answer?
Right. Well, it's part of the solution.
Yes. Can we then get back to the value engineering sheet that you attached? 3316, RYD 403316. Now this is March 2014, and you can see there under proposed VE cost savings, the third item, fourth item, fifth and sixth down, the last four under that, are all Reno Bond products, aren't they?
Yes.
Why were all of those revised prices or value engineering figures based only on Reno Bond products?
I think we'd done an awful lot of work with Reno Bond up to that point, and they'd been very, very helpful indeed. So we continued with them.
Does that tell us that when looking at preparing value engineering, as you would call it, or one might call it, options in respect of the rain screen, you didn't look at any other products such as Aluco Bond or VM?
Well, VM is not an ACM anyway, but I think in terms of other ACMs, what we could have done there, in hindsight, looking at it now, we could have said ACM natural zinc, ACM standard silver, because that makes it more generic. But we've used Reno Bond as a name. In hindsight, we could have used, as I say, ACM as a generic term, which would have meant we could have spoken to others, but we chose in this particular instance to name Reno Bond.
Did you make any investigations as to whether a cheaper alternative could be found with any other manufacturer of ACM panels?
I'm sure we would have done, yeah. I'm sure we would have talked to others, yeah.
You say you're sure you would have done. Do you remember actually doing so?
I don't, but those sort of conversations go on every job. So it is very unlikely that we would not have spoken to other people.
Can we go back to your tender/sales progress report, HAR 3010160, page 6, please? You can see that here that on the 19th of March, at the top of the page, we just looked at this. You took the call from Simon Lawrence, and he refers in the first line to a meeting which took place yesterday with the client. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you have any knowledge yourself of what took place at the meeting he was referring to there, namely the meeting on the 18th of March?
No.
Turning to an email then of the 19th of March, HAR 406044. This is an email from you to Ray Bailey, copy to others within Harley. Ray, update from Ryden's following their meeting yesterday. So this is the reference to the 18th of March meeting, which Mr. Lawrence had been referring to. Ryden have now been told officially that they are in pole position as preferred contractor. This will be signed off on the 28th, after which Ryden will be issued with some sort of design order to allow appointment of the architect. Studio E will be novated across under a D&B contract. And then you say, as predicted, the main bid is over budget and they are looking at the VE options, which include cladding. I believe the overall project is circa £10 million, and they are £1 million over budget. Ryden are keen to push this job down the face-fixed ACM route with the standard colour finish. I've asked Deb French to organise a range of samples which can create a zinc appearance, but whilst based on standard prices. This will be our starting point. Just looking at the £10 million figure, around £10 million, how did you come to that belief?
I don't know. I must have got a steer from somebody, but I don't remember.
Right. What was your understanding of why Ryden wanted to push for face-fixed ACM at this stage?
They had, obviously we did Chilcot Estate, which was 5 towers, and Ferrier Point. We've done 6 blocks with face-fixed ACM, so that would have been driving their desire to go down that route.
Right. Did you ask Deborah French only to provide samples? Sorry, I'll ask that question again. Was Deborah French the only person you approached to provide you with ACM samples?
I can't remember.
Mr. Chairman, we're slightly mid-topic here, but I'm looking at the clock.
Yes, it's about time we had a break.
Well, I was thinking that.
Well, if it's not going to inconvenience you too much.
No, Mr. Chairman, it's...
No.
No.
Well, Mr. Harris, it's time we had a bit of a break, I think. So we'll do that now. We'll come back at 20 to 4, please. Give you time for a cup of tea, I hope. And please remember not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything related to it. All right?
Okay.
Good. Thank you very much. 20 to 4 then, please. Good. Mr. Harris, there you are. Are you ready to go on?
Yes, can you see me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. We have you
Okay.
in the corner of our screen because we can then see you giving your evidence while we've also got the document up.
Okay.
All right?
Yes, no problem.
Right.
Can you see Mr. Millett? He's about to ask you a question.
I can.
You can. Good. Thank you very much. On we go then.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Harris, welcome back. Can I just then take you, I was mid-flow on a topic, but I can finish this off, I think, quite shortly. Can you please look at HAR 50931, please? This is an email that you sent to Simon Lawrence on the 22nd of April 2014. And just to set this in context, you are asked by him on that day for some thoughts, particularly around cost. I think you'll probably need to go to the next part of page 1 just for the context of this email. And in fact, even on to the bottom of onto page 2, where Bruce Soanes sent Simon Lawrence an email on that day asking him about metallics. Do you see that?
Yes.
That's the context. And then Simon Lawrence pings this on to you, asking for your help, particularly around cost. If we just go back to page 1. And he says, thoughts, please, particularly around cost. Now, your response to him is, you say, Simon, by far the easiest way for us to respond is for me to forward a copy of Bruce's email to Deb French at Alcoa, the Rainabond lady, for comment regarding cost. I'll do that straight away. We've probably got some of the metallic examples already in our collection at Harley House. I'll take a look and let you know. And then you talk about brushed look. And then in the third paragraph, you say, I would prefer to try and stick with Rainabond if pos. Nothing wrong with the Lucabond, of course, but I'm not sure we can manage the cost so well if we go that route. Is that why you wanted to stick with Rainabond? Because you weren't sure that you could manage the cost so well?
I think that's why the company wanted to stick with Grenfell. It wasn't a personal preference, it was a company preference.
All right. Well, whether it's you or Harley, I'm not sure it makes a difference to my question. But is the answer to my question yes, that Harley wanted to try to stick with Rainabond if possible because it wouldn't be able to manage the cost so well otherwise?
Correct, yeah.
Had you actually made any investigations into the costs management of the Lucabond product?
Don't recall doing that myself, that if that would have been the estimator, if anybody had done that.
What were your concerns regarding the management of costs if a Lucabond had been chosen instead of Rainabond?
Well, I think it was so cost sensitive, this job, as we've already seen, it was so vastly over budget that we just had to be very careful. And that because we had, a portfolio of projects that had been done mainly using a Rainabond product, they were proving themselves to be very keen in terms of price and were very keen on the job. So we just felt that that would be the best route to get the best price.
You felt that it would be the best route to get the best price, but does that tell us that you didn't actually investigate that by doing an actual comparison exercise by asking a Lucabond whether they could match or better what you were being offered by Rainabond?
I can't remember whether we did or not, to be honest. We may have done, we may not have done. I honestly can't remember.
Right. Okay. Can I then turn to a different topic? Can I ask you to go to CEP 50280? This is an email from you to Deborah French at Alcoa of the 23rd of April 2014, copy to Jeff Blades. Hi Deb, another item for Grenfell Tower. Can you send me the following, please? 1, copy of Rainabond BBA certificate. And then there are 2 other items. There is a meeting with the planners a week on Friday to try and get samples, etc. signed off. What prompted you to ask Deborah French for the BBA certificate for Rainabond?
I must have been asked for it by either Rydens or Studio E, or possibly Studio E through Rydens. So we must have been requested that information.
Does that tell us that you wouldn't have asked for this ordinarily, even without being prompted?
Oh, we may have done it at some point. I'm sure we did at some point. In the company's involvement with those sort of products, we probably would have, or the technical guys would have looked at those sort of bits of information. But it was probably just a very quick means to an end. If it's been requested for me to just ask Debbie for it, because she would have it immediately to hand. So that was just a means to an end.
Does that explain why you, who had no technical qualifications, were the one requesting the certificate rather than, for example, Daniel Anketel-Jones?
Correct.
Now, you describe it as the you say copy of Rainer Bond BBA certificate. Now, at this stage, you were discussing a number of different colours and finishes. Was it your understanding that there was only one certificate that covered all panels, or did you think that there was a particular certificate that covered the particular different colours of panels you were after, or were discussing?
Sorry, no, I wouldn't have known, to be honest. I only ever knew that there was, apart from different colours, as far as I was concerned, there was one type of Rainer Bond ACM. So I believed I was asking for that certificate.
Right. Now, you included Mike Alberston in this email. Why was that?
Well, being the estimator, just keeping him copied in.
And we can see that you included Jeff Blades in this email as a copy. Why did you do that?
Again, a matter of courtesy, because he got fairly involved with the job. So
Right.
it was just...
Why did Jeff Blades, did you think, need to see the BBA certificate?
Well, I'm not sure I did particularly. It was just a courtesy.
Right. We can then turn to Ms. French's reply, CEP 50281, and we can see from that that, I'll just wait for it to come up on the screen. She replies the same day to you and copied to Mike Alberston and Jeff Blades in the same way that you had copied them in. And she attaches the BBA certificate, as you can see, as well as the warranty and some colour charts. And she says, "Hi Mark, as per your couple of emails, I've attached copies of our Rainer Bond BBA specimen warranty. We will supply the original warranty once we've produced and shipped material, etc." When that came to you, did you open the attachment and look at the certificate itself?
I can't remember, quite possibly.
Let's see if it jogs your memory. HAR 50934, please.
That's certainly a document I've seen before. Whether it was on that day with that email or not, I don't know, but I have seen that before.
Right. Do you think you'd seen it before April 2014?
Oh, I don't know. Honestly, don't know.
Doing the best you can, and I know it's difficult. When do you think you might first have seen this document?
I honestly can't remember. It may have been with that email.
Right.
But yeah, whether it was or not, obviously, I can't remember.
Do you recall a time, whether this occasion or any other, that you read it through?
No, I wouldn't have read it through, because that would only ever be a technical person that would do that. I could read it, but I wouldn't be able to technically assess it. So I could read it, but that's all I could do.
Right. Could you go to page 3? Please. You can see from paragraph 1.1, under description, that the panels comprise 2 half-millimetre thick aluminium alloy sheets bonded to either side of a core of low-density polyethylene. The panels are available either plain edge riveted system or flanged cassette system to suit architectural requirements. a Duragloss or PVDF coating available in various colours protects the exposed face. A polyester primer protects the unexposed face. The products are also available in a fire retardant grade. Now, you told us earlier this morning that you weren't aware of the availability of these panels in a fire retardant grade or form, but you did get this document. Did you ever see from this document that in fact these products are or were available in a fire retardant grade?
No.
Does that tell us that you didn't read at least page 3 of this document?
I probably didn't read it. I probably just glanced at it because it wouldn't be a type of document that I would read.
Right.
It's not part of my remit. And even if I had read it, then, I'm not a qualified person, so it wouldn't be within my remit to look at documents of this nature.
Yes, I see. So does that tell us that the descriptions of the fire performance of this panel on this certificate were not anything that you noticed or addressed your mind to at any time?
No, sir.
Before I leave it, I suppose I just ought to put the point to you. Can you go back to page 1, please? Three-quarters of the way down that page, under key factors assessed, you'll see that as the third item down, behaviour in relation to fire. In relation to the building regulations for reaction to fire, the panels may be regarded as having a Class 0 surface in England and Wales. Is that something you saw in the certificate when you got it?
I may have done, I don't know.
If you did it mean anything to you?
I'd heard of the term Class O in connection with spread of flame, but I'm not being technical in nature. I couldn't have explained it necessarily, but I did know, I did know of the term Class O.
For what it's worth, what did it mean to you?
Not a great deal, to be honest, because I would never have been involved in that level of information. It just was not part of my remit.
I'd like to ask you some questions now about insulation. Can we turn first to CEL 409973? This is Celotex Salesforce entry, and if we look at page 2 of that, please, we can see that your name is mentioned in relation to a meeting on the 24th of November with Celotex, and I'll help you find that. It's about halfway, just below halfway down the page, if in fact that could be scrolled down. You can see on the very right-hand side a number of date entries, 24th of November 2014, and if you read from the right-hand column where the dates are across, there's the first entry, Mark Harris, you see, to do with the Premier Inn Terminal 4 at Heathrow. You see that?
Yeah.
Do you remember a meeting with Celotex on the 24th of November 2014?
I really don't.
Do you remember meeting a man called Jonathan Room at Harley House on that date?
I really don't. I mean, I've met Jonathan before because he was with another company prior to Celotex, so I know the individual. I
Right.
can't even remember what the project is, Premier Inn T4, to be honest. So, I mean, it's possible, but I don't remember it.
Can we look at CEL 6018, please? This is an email from Jonathan Room to Daniel Anketel-Jones, dated the same date, 24th of November 2014, recording the meeting at Harley House. And he says, "Hi Dan, I spoke with Mark and the team regarding a few projects. Grenfell Tower, Premier House, Chartwell Southend, and Premier Inn Terminal 4, Heathrow. Do you remember meeting Jonathan Room and discussing any of these projects?
I think that's more likely to be Mark Stapley than me.
All right. Let's then move on to the next page, page 2 of this. This is the day before, 23rd of November 2014, from Jonathan Room to Daniel Anketel-Jones. I've just thought it would be better to catch up with Mark and Mark in the office, or would you be able to meet in London after 2 p.m? Was one of the Marks you?
Yeah, it would have been, yeah.
And if we go then to the top email, if we can go to the top email on that, on CEL 18, top of page 1. Where he says, "Hi Dan, I spoke with Mark and the team." Was that you, do you think?
I can't remember, but it wouldn't be, even if a manufacturer was to come in to the office to see, let's say they were seeing the drawing office or the technical guys, they would often poke their head in to see me and just say, "What are you guys tendering at the moment? Anything we can help you with?" So I may have been in the building. I don't remember attending that meeting because it sounds like that's specific to something the designers were looking at. But I may well have been in the building, and he may have well spoken to me for 5 minutes while he was there.
Do you remember Mr. Room, whether on this occasion or any other occasion, giving you any assurances about Celotex RS5000's suitability for use on high-rise buildings?
Well, he would have done that to me. I would have been the wrong man to talk to about that, to be honest, so no.
Did you ever meet Mr. Room while he was at Celotex?
I don't remember specifically meeting him. Because Harley was a small office, he may well have turned up, or probably did turn up, discussing with other people. So I would have been in the room, I would have been in the building, as it were. But I don't believe I attended any meetings specifically with Nathan on that job.
In the last answer but one, you said, "Well, he would have done that to me. I would have been the wrong man to talk to." Do you mean he wouldn't have spoken to you about or given you assurances about the suitability of RS5000 on high-rise buildings?
It's been highly unlikely because I wouldn't have been asking him technically related questions.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that for the transcript, so thank you. Can I then turn to some questions about Rockwool? Can I start by taking you to RYD 409096? This is an email sent on the 18th of June 2014. As you can see, from Simon Lawrence to you. "Hi Mark, following our discussion about Green Deal installers, I've had a conversation with Tom Elliott of Rockwool, see bottom email, and given him your details to discuss products and how it will fit within the grant funding. He seems very helpful, as you'd expect when trying to sell a product, but also knows about grant funding. We may need to get a relationship with him and rain a bond if any grant funding is to be achieved. He could also be a very good contact for all of us in the future, as he only deals with the occupied tower block work, so we'll know probably before any of us who's getting work done." And what he does, Mr. Lawrence, is to forward you an approach that Claire Williams at the TMO had from Tom Elliott at Rockwool, as we look down. And if we look at page 2 of this email chain, Tom Elliott is writing to Claire Williams at the TMO, and in the third paragraph he says, "All stone wool insulation comes with a Euro-class fire rating of A1, and therefore our systems are particularly suited to high-rise refurbishment in accordance with BR 135. I was hoping to inquire whether any specification had yet been set for the insulated rain screen being installed on the Grenfell Tower refurbishment." When you got this email via Simon Lawrence, as I've just shown you, did you scroll down and read it all?
I probably would have glanced at it because I know that being involved with Ferrier Point, there was eco funding granted on that project. So Rydens have been through this process once because it's the main contractor that tends to drive this. So I wasn't totally shocked to see an email coming through raising the subject of potential grant funding for the client, but I probably wouldn't have got into the detail of it.
Right. And on Ferrier Point, you were using mineral wool, weren't you?
Yeah.
And ACM made by Rainer-Bond.
It was either Rainer-Bond or Aluca-Bond. I can't remember which.
Okay. Do you remember, out of interest, whether the grant funding was given, or one of the terms of the grant funding was that you should use rock panel instead of ACM?
I don't know. I never saw the application,
Right.
but grant funding, I believe, I never saw proof of this, but my understanding is that grant funding was given to Ferrier Point or given to the client, which Ryden organised for them for that building, and the grant funding was to cover an increase in the thickness of the insulation and an upgrade from double glazing to triple glazing.
Did you, when you received this email string from Simon Lawrence, look at the paragraph in Tom Elliott's email to Claire Williams about the stone insulation coming with a Euro class fire rating of A1 and therefore being particularly suited to high-rise refurbishments in accordance with BR 135? Did you note that?
No.
Does that tell us that you had, on receiving this email, no cause to query whether RS 5000, which is a PIR product, had a Euro class fire rating?
No.
Or even to ask yourself what RS 5000 Euro class rating was?
No, because it wouldn't be me assessing these products.
Can we look at RYD 409167, please? This is an email from Zach Maynard on the same day, 18th of June 2014, to you, setting out a 26-point set of queries, or confirmations, a little bit of both, I think. And if you look at item 12, you can see he says, and he's confirming, Rockwool duo slab insulation to be used to ensure eco-funding secured on the project. To your recollection, was this the first time Ryden was suggesting using Rockwool as the insulation?
I honestly can't remember.
Now, I think you confirmed
possibly.
earlier. So I'm so sorry. Do you want to finish your answer?
Quite possibly, but I can't remember.
All right. You told us earlier that Harley had used Rockwool at Ferrier Point, and I think also the same is true at Chalcots, isn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Did Harley usually use Rockwool duo slab insulation?
Oh, crikey. I would think probably more than perhaps other products, but I wouldn't have been involved in that level of detail, so I couldn't quote to you exactly what was used and where. Obviously, I know the two tower block projects that we mentioned because they've been spoken about recently, so I know that. But as for other jobs, I wouldn't know.
Did you know at this stage that the insulation to be used was RS 5000, or as originally stipulated, FR 5000, made by Celotex?
No.
You didn't. So does that tell us that you didn't have any reason to investigate why it was that Duoslab is being proposed in place of Celotex?
No.
Right. Can I ask you to go to HAR 405818, please? This is an email from you to Mike Albiston of the same day, and it follows on from Simon Lawrence's email to you of that day, which we've just looked at. And he says, and it's also copied to Mark Stapley and Daniel Ankle-Jones at Harley. And you say, Mike, please place a copy on file. We are being driven to use Rockwool insulation in order for the client to obtain grant funding. My only concern is that if Rockwool think it's a done deal, they might put a price premium on their product. We can sound this one out when the chap from Rockwool contacts us before handing over to our construction team. When you said my only concern is that if Rockwool think it's a done deal, they might put a price premium on their product. What did you mean by that comment?
Well, if Rockwool felt that they sold the product to the end client, they were definitely going to get the order. They may not be of a mind to be particularly competitive. And the project was already under pressure with budget, as we know.
I see. How would Rockwool get to think it was a done deal, in your words?
Well, I don't know. That's just me guessing that could happen. I'm not saying it would happen. I'm just saying that if, because the word "if" is in there, if Rockwool think. So I'm not saying they do. I'm just guessing. These sort of situations do happen. So I'm just sort of preempting that something could happen like that.
Can you go to RYD 409380, please? This is Tom Elliott's email to Simon Lawrence of the 20th of June, 2014, not copied to you. Hi, Simon. Hope you're well. Sorry for the delay in coming back to you. I've just tried to call. I have spoken to Mark from Harley and explained the situation regarding the 25 years guarantee required in order to attract eco-funding. I have checked with our technical department and we won't be able to incorporate the Rainabond cladding with our insulation board and still attract a 25-year guarantee. The only option would be utilise a rock panel board. In summary, the reason for this is that we, Rock Panel, cannot guarantee the additional Rainabond components as they are an external company, but Rock Panel are a Rockwool group company and therefore we are able/willing to take on the risk. If we can get Rock Panel to match the zinc effect of the proposed panels and come to some sort of commercial agreement on price, do you think there would be an interest from yourselves and the client to alter the specification? We would obviously keep any price variation to a minimum, and the additional ECO funding might help to keep the costs in line with the client's budgets. Was it you, do you think, or was it Mark Stapley to whom Mr. Elliott spoke when he says in the second paragraph there, I have spoken to Mark?
Probably me.
To your knowledge, was any consideration given to using Rock Panel, in other words, a Rockwool cladding product, in place of the ACM?
Oh, I don't know. Don't think so, but I don't know.
Why is that? Do you know?
I think it was probably too far down the line. I mean, reading that, that's a marketing pitch by Rockwool to sell, the insulation and the panel, and I don't blame them for that. That's a great approach. But at the end of the day, we'd gone so far down the road. Now, if it had been, because I think there was an email from me to Ryden saying, where do we go with this? I seem to recall. And if somebody had come back to us and said, look, there's more time now, the clients have given us more time, and we're happy for you to investigate this now, put a price together, we would have done that. So we wouldn't have had an issue with that.
Did you make any inquiries with Rockwool about the cost of using their complete system, Rockwool with Rock Panel?
No, because I think I was waiting for Ryden to really tell us what to do.
To your knowledge, was Mr. Elliott's proposal given any consideration by either Ryden or Harley?
It would have been for Ryden's to have instructed us at this point to tell us what to do. So we wouldn't have done that without Ryden saying, right, guys, we now want you to investigate this. We wouldn't have done that without being told to do it.
Well, did you have a discussion with Mr. Lawrence about doing that?
I can't recall.
Was a cost comparison ever undertaken as between a Rockwool and Rock Panel system on the one hand and a Rainabond Celotex system on the other?
Not to my knowledge.
Why is that?
Well, as I said just now, that would have been for Rydens to have told us to do that.
From Harley's perspective, was it because Harleys were keen to stick with Renault Bond and therefore didn't want to investigate the use of rock panel or indeed Rockwool in place of Celotex?
We really are comfortable with. I mean, Rockwool was a product that had been used before. We had no axe to grind, as it were, with these things. But it would have been for Rydens at that stage, and or the architect, or a combination of both, because obviously the architect would have to have been involved in this, as would the planners, because we've been changing everything. And if everybody in that, within all the other stakeholders, felt it was a good idea, and then told us to go forward and start obtaining prices, we would have done, because it would have been pointless obtaining prices if all the other stakeholders had not bought into it.
Did you ever attempt to analyse whether any cost increase as a result of using the Rockwool rock panel system could be offset by eco grant funding?
No.
And why is that?
That wouldn't have been our job. That would have been down to Ryden.
Did you ever seek to have any discussions with Ryden about undertaking such an exercise?
No, that's a matter for them.
Would it not also have been a matter for you as the subcontractor, given your role in assisting them in choosing Renault Bond ACM panels, given that role?
We'd have been happy to have assisted if they did ask. They did ask on Ferrier Point, and we assisted.
Comparing your proactive approach on the ACM with your non-proactive approach on rock panel, can you explain why it is that you didn't take the same proactive approach with looking at rock panel as you did with the ACM?
Well, I don't think it wasn't proactive. I'd clearly spoken to them. It was proactive.
We don't see any evidence anywhere, at least here, and indeed anywhere else, of you saying to Ryden, well, we should investigate the use of a system incorporating Rockwool and rock panel together in an attempt to obtain eco-funding and do a price comparison exercise. Now, we've not seen that. And my question really is, well, why is that?
Well, that's a matter for other stakeholders. It's not a matter for us. There's the client, there's the architect, there's Ryden, there's the planners. If all of those stakeholders wish that situation, we would have been delighted to assist, as we did with everything else.
Yes, and that's why I say you were not proactive in pushing that exercise, were you?
We wouldn't be proactive if we didn't know that's what they wanted. If we knew that's what they wanted, we would have then been proactive.
And just as you had obtained quotes from CEP and Alcoa, it would have been easy for you, would it not, to have obtained quotes from a supplier and fabricator for the Rockwool rock panel combination? Is that not right?
I imagine so, yeah.
And I think you're telling us the reason you didn't is simply that you weren't asked to. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct. If this is obviously addressed to Simon, it's not addressed to me. So if Ryden said to us, we've now spoken to the client, the architect, other stakeholders, now they wish to pursue this, fair enough, we would have pursued it and been proactive. But we can't go off on tangents all over the place, pursuing things at will.
Can we look at RYD 409673, please? Where we see your response to an email from Simon Lawrence. Can we please go to page 2 of that, which I think we're on? Yes. That's what I want. Page under. This is actually part of an email from Zach Maynard, and I'm sorry, it's popped up in rather an unattractive form. Can we scroll up a little bit, please, to see the beginning of this email? Right. It's an email from you. Sorry, could you go to the next one up? Next email up. And then we'll go down again. Yes, it's an email from you on the 24th of June to Zach Maynard, saying, Zach, I'm pleased to advise that the majority of the items below are acceptable, notes added in red. I would, however, draw your attention specifically to items 10 and 12. And then if we go into the email itself, scrolling down into the email from Zach Maynard to you, which was the 26 item list of queries and confirmations, and go to item 12, a little bit lower down that page, we can see where he had said rock-wool duo slab insulation to be used to ensure eco-funding secured on the project. This is where you respond and you say, we have been contacted by Rockwool in this regard. They advise that unless they supply the cladding panels, rails and insulation as a complete system, eco-funding would not be available to the client on this project. Whilst we are happy to use Rockwool as an insulation product, our bid is based on using Rainobond panels and aluminium rails from a supplier yet to be confirmed. I'm not sure where we go with this.
Yeah.
By saying our bid was based on Rainobond, were you suggesting to Mr. Maynard that the cost would increase if you use Rockwool or the Rockwool system?
I didn't know, but I believe the rock panel system is 8 or 7 millimetres thick, so it would be more money. That's absolutely for sure. But as you can see, as I explained just now, I'm asking Rydens, where do we go with this? So I'm asking them to tell me. And if the response had been, yeah, please pursue that, then that's what we would have done.
Yes, and by saying our bid was based on Rainobond, it looks as if your concern was departing from the system using Rainobond and using a rock panel system because you couldn't control the costs.
No, because the original bid, of course, was based, what I probably should have said there, the original bid was based on zinc. The value engineered version was then obviously Rainobond, so we'd got to that point. So to change it again would have been another change, which would not have been an issue to us if that was what we were instructed to do. But the cost would definitely have gone up, and the project was already under pressure from a budget point of view. We don't control the budget. If the client have said, here's another £500,000 to go and do it in rock panel, absolutely no issue at all.
Now, we've seen earlier evidence where Harley had expressed a preference for working with Alcoa and getting Rainobond from the Harley selfish point of view. Did that preference contribute to a lack of interest in the Rockwool proposal, Mr. Harris?
I don't think they're connected.
Right, you don't think they're connected. You also say here that eco-funding would not be available to the client. You say, unless they supply the cladding panels, rails and insulation as a complete system, eco-funding would not be available to the client on this project. Is that a fair summation of what you'd been told by Tom Elliott?
Yes.
Looking back at it, it seems that Tom Elliott had told you that in order to attract eco-funding, they needed a 25-year guarantee. And in fact, it was the problem with the guarantee that would mean that there'd be difficulty attracting eco-funding.
Well, I think he said that to Simon, hadn't he? Yeah.
I see. Now, we can't identify any response from Ryden, whether Zach Maynard or anybody else, in response to what you say at paragraph 12 in red there, which is still up on the screen. Did you investigate, in the end, whether any eco-funding would in fact offset costs?
No, that wouldn't have been a matter for us.
Did you ever chase Ryden up to give you a response in what they wanted?
No, that was between them and the client.
So you let it lapse?
Well, it wasn't for us to do anything with.
I see. Mr. Chairman, I've come to the end of my questions.
Yes, thank you.
In the usual way, I will need to take the usual check to see whether there's anything
Yes.
I need to ask or whether there are others who have questions.
And do
Might
you
that
think
be a
10
complete
minutes is long enough?
I think 10 minutes will probably be long enough.
Well, just so you understand what's going on, Mr. Harris, Council has reached the end of his questions, but he needs time just to check that there's nothing he's overlooked or that anyone else would like him to ask. So we're going to have a short break now, just for 10 minutes until 4:30, and then at 4:30 we'll see whether there are a few more questions that he'd like to put to you. Is that all right?
Yes, no problem.
Good, thank you. And again, as I've told you before, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence during the break. All right.
Understood.
Thank you very
Right.
much. 4:30 then, please. Well, Mr. Harris, I'm sorry we kept you waiting. I'm afraid there were one or two things that had to be organised before we could resume. But Mr. Millett, do you have some further questions?
Mr. Harris, I don't have any further questions for you. So it remains for me to thank you very much for coming remotely to the inquiry to give evidence. It's been very helpful, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Yes, well, I certainly echo that, Mr. Harris. It's very good of you to make yourself available to give evidence to us. It's been very helpful to hear what you have to say. So thank you very much. And oh, excuse me a minute. Your counsel now wants to say something.
Before Mr. Harris is released, I just wonder whether counsel to the inquiry will be proposing to ask the same questions usually asked of all of the other witnesses.
No.
No. Right. Well, Mr. Harris, that is the end of the questioning. Thank you again for making yourself available. We are grateful to you, and that's the end of it. So there's no point telling you you can go home now, because you're already there. But you can go and have another cup of tea. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. Mr. Millett, thank you very much. That's it for this week.
It is.
And we shall resume at 10 o'clock on Monday with another witness.
With another Harley witness.
With another
Yes.
Harley
Yes,
witness.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. 10 o'clock on Monday. Thank you.